Hello, Michelle. Don't I look dodgy sitting in a car park recording a video? I gotta get it done when I can get it done. Something that I enjoy doing is postal mail. Something that I enjoy doing with postal mail is making it look a bit special. I had to do 3rd birthday invitations for Kit, and I sort of found a template that I liked and then popped in some photos, and then it wasn't quite zhuzhy enough for my taste. So I thought I'd give a go adding some glitter to it. So I was just going to show you how I first tried doing washi tape, and that didn't really work out. It was too fiddly, and so then I just tried using glue and glitter, and I think that looks pretty good. And then I also worked out how I wanted the envelopes to look, like little presents, and used the glitter tape for those instead. I like listening to podcasts, but I don't get much of a chance because I only really like listening to them when I'm out walking by myself or driving by myself, which doesn't happen that often anymore. I pick ones out at random from ones that have been recommended, and there are some duds and some good ones. And the other day I was listening to Design Matters with Debbie Millman, her interview with Seth Godin. And I know of Seth Godin, but I've never watched his TED Talk or read any of his books or anything like that. I've occasionally glanced at his blog and it didn't really interest me that much. But I would definitely recommend this episode. Seth Godin is really interesting to listen to. His past is interesting, the life choices that he's made, the way that he behaves, his attitude, his thoughtfulness. I think that he's clearly thought about a lot of things a lot, and therefore he has quite a sophisticated kind of attitude towards a lot of things in life. I will link it below, of course. I'd earmarked a spot for TEDx Melbourne in my 4 interesting things this week. However, TEDx Melbourne was actually really disappointing, and we just received a email follow-up today which was like, how likely are you to recommend TEDx Melbourne to friends and family, colleagues? And I'm actually going to give it a 0. It can be such a bummer to hear someone complaining about something or saying negative things about something. Like, it can be really draining and make you feel negative as well. So I don't really want to do that. Instead, I want to kind of paint a picture of how my ideal TEDx Melbourne would have gone. So I would have arrived at about 10 in the morning with my sister, and we would have been given free coffee and tea and maybe some little muffins or something just in case we forgot breakfast, or, you know, it's getting towards morning tea time anyway, so that would have been fantastic to just have a little nibble. And there would have been exciting, interesting things to look at where the display stuff was, and there would have been ways to interact with other people, like even, you know, the Twitter screens, that kind of thing that was at South by Southwest, where you can sort of get a feel of who's there and what they're saying. And then I've written down a whole bunch of ideas of things that I would have loved to have heard about, because the topic of the day was rebels and revolutionaries. And I think that there are so many interesting things that come to my mind when I think about rebels and revolutionaries, and clearly I was disappointed with the kind of talks that were given. So I'm going to read from my book here so that I don't have to memorize all this and look at the camera. I want to hear about Portugal legalizing drugs, and now it's been over 10 years, and how that's affected Portugal. I want to hear about America legalizing marijuana and the outcome so far. I want to hear about the Koori court in Melbourne, which is a court specially set up for Aboriginal culture, process, belief, so that Indigenous people who are so severely disadvantaged can be treated well by the system, as well as we can treat them at the moment. So the process is quite different from regular court. The drug court in Melbourne, which is doing really, I think, really good stuff. It's being innovative, and it's really trying to help people with how drugs have affected their lives. Ideas for new approaches to refugee problem around the world. Australia wanting to not open the floodgates and let 1 million people in. Altruism, so direct giving and altruism as opposed to traditional charities and microloans, I have heard is the best way to go at the moment for individuals to do direct giving, for example with GiveDirect. So that's kind of a revolution in charities, that we're just directly giving money to people who need the money. And I want to hear more about how that's going, and if there are other revolutionary ideas around the corner with altruism, where revolutions are needed in the world, what industries, what countries, what topics, electric cars and self-driving cars and how they might affect everything, the AI that's just around the corner, and not the usual kind of conversations around that, like they're going to take all our jobs, but I want to hear, like, how is it going to revolutionize stuff? Who are the rebels who are secretly doing stuff with AI and not telling anyone about it? For example, could there be a call center that is actually run by AI at the moment and they're not letting people know, because then there might be a backlash? 80,000 Hours website, which is kind of a revolutionary way to look at going into careers. So the organization behind that, they're looking at, instead of just following some career path without much thought, thinking about how you can make the world a better place. You've got probably around 80,000 hours to do that in your work life, so planning that out at the beginning. Universal basic income as a way of revolutionizing money. There are trials going on, I think, in Ghana and several other places, so I want to hear more about those. People living with different lifestyles, different priorities, e.g. vagabonding, and stories of people saving up and then traveling for years at a time, maybe even with their family, what that's like, experiencing the world rather than just being locked down to one place. Ways that other industries might be revolutionized. For example, radio has moved towards podcasts, record labels has been able to move towards MP3s and people sharing on the internet, books to ebooks. I want to know what else haven't we seen that might be coming up. Even I was thinking the concept of the capsule wardrobe, some people haven't even heard of that as an idea, like really having a tiny amount of belongings for what you wear, and that could be extended to like capsule belongings and how much stuff do we need. I want to hear about people who are breaking the law but they believe that they're doing it for a good cause. So euthanasia, psychedelics for anxiety treatment, marijuana for pain, MDMA for PTSD and for therapy, for relationship therapy. I want to hear about injecting rooms. I want to hear about if there are people sneaking in refugees and not doing the paperwork, giving illegals jobs. I want to know what other laws are being broken. There was also a podcast, I think it was This American Life, that talked about a revolutionary approach to bullying and to the way that children interact with each other, which was a rule in a school that was like, you can't say no to other kids, so if they ask to play with you, you can't say no. And it was revolutionizing the way that kids were being, or not being rather, mean to each other. I'd love to hear about more stories like that. And the other big one that I thought about was, how do you change a mind? So revolution of opinions and attitudes. And I know that arguing isn't successful if you want to change someone's mind. So for example, the same-sex marriage equality, if you have a parent who is really set on, it needs to be traditional marriages between a man and a woman, and that's how it's always been, and other people are going to ruin the concept of marriage. How do you change your mind? I think that's a really interesting revolution to talk about. So those are all the things that I would have wanted to hear about, and I would have found that so much more worthwhile and wonderful and interesting and inspiring and everything. And I think the opposite of that, for example, is getting someone from an advertising agency to talk about their work. And that was one of the talks. As an aside, I just wanted to ask, are you going to Webstock next year? My last topic is the Melbourne Festival, Nilaja Sun, who was absolutely extraordinary. My mum buys all kinds of tickets to all kinds of shows. Sometimes she's like, hey, I have a spare ticket to this show tonight. It's a monologue by a dead horse who's lamenting that the cornfield nearby them isn't growing quickly enough, and it's spoken in 17 different languages. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I have to wash my dog's hair tonight. And sometimes she's like, I've got a spare ticket to this award-winning actress and playwright who does a show where she plays all of these different characters, and it's about a woman and her daughter and her father who are in a little apartment in New York, and a hurricane is coming, and how the daughter needs life support and what happens when the power goes out. So that's what my mum said. She said, I have a spare ticket to that show, and I went the other night and it was just fantastic. I can't even begin to show you or explain how this woman goes from all these different characters. I'm really happy that I get the opportunity from my mum to see these random things. I also saw the Book of Mormon earlier this year, which was hilarious. Nilaja Sun is incredible, and I hope she wins more awards for her play called Pike Street. Thank you so much for the sketchbook school course. That looks really cool. I started doing the intro videos the other night, and I don't want to get behind so that then it feels impossible to catch up, so I've started doing everything already. Hopefully I can keep up. Thank you for all the Instagram recommendations, but you didn't answer my question about art supplies, so I'm still curious about how you store all your art supplies. Okay, gotta pick my kid up now. Love you, bye.